Hi everyone, my name is Mark. I'm one of the coaches here at Udacity. Hope everyone's doing well. And joining me remotely is Chris. Chris, can you say hi? It looks like a little bit laggy right now. Hey Chris, can you say hi?
I hear you.
Yeah.
But oh well, comes in and out. Sometimes you're like a robot.
Okay. All right. So we'll try to make it work. So not sure about the connection right now, but we'll figure that out as we go. So let's introduce everyone. Christopher, he is one of my buddies that I went to school with at business school, and he is a serial entrepreneur. Chris, can you tell a little bit us about yourself and what the business have you done and what are you doing now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of these people that has had maybe 2 or 3 years of W-2 employment. Real quick, Mark, you can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, so I've always worked for myself since I was 12. I didn't like having bosses. I always wanted to be my own boss. So I always sort of started businesses uh, and was a consultant, right? So I went to grad school 3 times. I love learning. And so basically, my professional history started in the holistic health and exercise physiology. So I have a master's degree in exercise physiology, holistic health practitioner's degree. I somehow was training elite athletes, professional athletes, worked with Cirque du Soleil, those kinds of things. Got bored, started building day spas somehow. Through day spas, I got interested in technology. Through technology, I started developing technologies and writing patents and things like that and commercializing them. My wife is an acupuncturist, so we own a wellness clinic here in Newport Beach. And now all I do is find interesting technologies and commercialize them, starting with my own, which is a nanotech play at the moment.
So looks like come in and out a little bit. So we'll try to make it work. And everyone who's receiving this broadcast, please tell us Chris is if the signal is a little choppy for you. We'll try to adjust the signal if we can here. But yeah, Chris, can you tell us a little bit more about this nanotech technology that you're trying to launch right now?
Yeah, so basically what we do is we change water. So we can take gas bubbles, any type of gas, and we can make them into nanoscopic gas bubbles. And when you do that, the bubbles are so small, they don't have enough mass to float, and therefore they change the physical properties of the water. So now the water is capable of self-cleaning in manufacturing. It makes plants grow faster when you use oxygen. If you put your body, you soak in the water, it makes the wounds heal faster, like a hyperbaric chamber almost. So we super saturate liquid with gases. And because the bubbles are so small, they're almost the size of the molecule of water itself. It begs the question whether we're really dealing with water anymore. So the applications for water remediation, for in clean tech, for healthcare, and in agriculture are astounding. Not to mention, you can make nano hydrogen bubbles into gasoline and make gasoline far more efficient. Those kinds of things. That's
Awesome.
essentially it.
Great. That's a great pitch. So everyone who's like you know on right now, that what Chris told you was very succinct and was very short, and he did it in less than 2 minutes of how to explain his idea and what he's trying to do. So throughout this session, we're gonna go and talk to Chris more about how do you get things done? How do you pitch to people? Yeah, it's like what's the process? Like Chris, because you've done this, you've been in the trenches per se. You've been, like you've been in the field, like you've seen it. So like we're not talking dive deep into these tactics. Like how do you actually get it done? How do you find people? How do you approach them? How do you build rapport? And then after that, how do you make the pitch and then make the ask? Like what is the ask? Like so, like really, can we start off there? And Chris, can you explain to us? What's your first step when you have this idea? What's your first step? What do you do?
Yeah. So I think it all begins with really truly understanding sort of who you are, where you begin and where you end. And that's pretty conceptual and philosophical, but it plays. And when you try to emulate a successful entrepreneur or anybody else that isn't you, and that way of being is unnatural, investors, customers, everybody sniffs it out 1,000 miles away. It has to be natural. So for me, I'm very comfortable talking with people. I'm very comfortable having conversations. I can get up on stage and do pitches and PowerPoints and all the rest, but I always think of those as my way to finally get on the same side of the table with them, hopefully with a cup of tea or coffee, and have a conversation. I'm good at having conversations with people. Well, let me back up. I'm best at having conversations with people. I am very good at presenting, but I'm best in a one-on-one kind of situation where I can converse. Now, understanding sort of who and what you are. There's a fantastic article, Mark. You should find this. Gallup did it. They basically took a large group of people and they had them do a reading test, right? So people who scored low were put in the not good at reading group, and the people who scored moderate were put in the or well were put in the good at reading group. They then both groups went through a speed reading course, and at the end of it, the bad readers increased their reading capacity by, I think, like 120%, right? I mean, they literally over doubled how fast they could read, right? Astounding results. The people who were already good at reading increased their reading results by almost 2,000%. And the moral of that particular story is, if you invest in your strengths, you get stratospheric returns. But if you are constantly trying to make your weaknesses, strengthen your weaknesses, you do get increases, but it's diminishing returns. Not diminishing returns. It's not as big as you will get if you find things that you are actually good at. So, case in point, I started doing pitch contests and these things, and I get all nervous, and I'm not my best self when I'm up there doing a pitch. I found that the investors and things that I was talking with love to hang out with me. I love to go to happy hour. I love to have a beer with them or talk with them, a meal, something like that, have a conversation. So I know that about me. I am social. I am an extrovert, right? If you are not social, if you are not an extrovert, and you are not comfortable in one-on-one situations talking about yourself and your product, you need to figure out how you best present who and what you are. So the first answer to your question, Mark, is you got to know who you are. You got to know where you begin and end, what your strengths are, invest in those strengths, and outsource your weaknesses. My other partners are my partners because I'm the mouth. I'm good at running my mouth. I'm good at doing this kind of stuff, right? They're not. They're geniuses. They write incredible patents, but they couldn't commercialize anything because a business, at the end of the day, is just a group of people. That's all it is. So your idea is born from a human. Humans get together, humans start a business, and humans go out to sell to other humans. It's all relationships. So if you're not the best at maintaining relationships or building them or all the rest, and that's not a strength of yours, find someone who it is. So I kind of went off on a tangent there. Rein me back in.
Right, let's bring it back. And also, Chris, we're hearing some pings from your phone. Is it possible for you to put that on vibrate?
Absolutely. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. So, great. We already have one question from Aaron, and like with Aaron, we're gonna ask Chris will answer your questions afterwards. So we just want to make sure that we can get all the information that Chris can give us, and then after that, hold tight, and then we'll answer your question there. So, Chris, okay. So first step, I think that's a great tip, is to know who you are, know your strengths. Okay, let's assume that, let's just in your case, you like to socialize with people. You like, how do you use that tactic to approach people? How do you get, how do you actually go and ask investors, okay, hey, I have this idea. Can you meet with me? Can we talk? What's your tactic? What
Right.
do you?
Yeah, my way of doing it is through what I call evangelists, right? So I somehow have people who know me, know my product, and otherwise think that I've already sort of ingratiated myself to them. And it could be my wife, it could be Mark, a good friend from business school, it could be anyone. And I use those people to make the introduction of my technology and me for me. In other words, if I come, I'll give you a great example. So, a million years ago, when I first was going through grad school, I was a massage therapist. All right. So, when I was working with Cirque du Soleil and all the rest, I was a massage therapist. Right.
Well,
So, if I went up to anybody on the planet and said, "Hey, I'm a fantastic massage therapist. Why don't you come with me and hire me?" Your first reaction is, "You're creepy. Like, go away." Right. Like that's a right. However, if I have one of my elite athletes go up to you and say, "Hey, this is the guy that's been training me as I've been going through my workouts. He's awesome. He's one of the best massage therapists on the planet." I've already been introduced. I already have some gravity. So when I start talking, I'm not pitching from zero, right? I'm pitching from a place, or I'm talking to them, and the groundwork has been laid. So I'm a big fan of using what I call evangelists, people that have already sort of bought in and want to help. And that's a huge thing. People love to help, and people love to talk about themselves, right? So people, when you'll be amazed if you go to someone who you think might be inaccessible and say, "Hey, I need help getting to talk to this investor, this customer, this type of thing. I know you have a relationship with them. Would you be willing to make an introduction for me?" You'd be amazed at how many people are just willing to do it. People love helping. I think that's sort of a basic part of being a human. Now, they need to make sure that they're not going to compromise the relationship by presenting, someone who isn't who they said. They have to have a relationship with you. And the way I build these relationships with these evangelists is by asking them about them, and by asking them how I can help them. I am Mark is a fantastic person. So Mark and I are in business school. I'm starting this nanotech company. Mark
right.
and I work to help me do stuff and help build my concept and my idea. And yeah, it's part of class and all the rest, but he really went above and beyond. I am constantly asking Mark, how can I help him? And when he says, "Hey man, I need you to come, talk on this webcast," of course I cancel everything. I'm going to help him constantly. I love to help. He loves to help. It's a symbiotic thing. So when I ask people to talk about themselves, talk about their business, and I try to think about how can I help them? Because if you help, then they're going to want to. It's this sort of symbiotic kind of energy that just keeps going up in good places. Does that kind of answer the question, Mark?
That's great. Thanks, Chris. And I think what you said hit on the nail about trying to help people first, right? It's like you're always thinking, what can that other person benefit from my skills, from my experience, and then you hope that
But I got to cut you off. It has to come from a genuine place, though, because
Okay.
if I come up to you saying, "I need to use you for your contact," so let me go into my Rolodex of thoughts and think of like what sort of pawn or chip can I play? So now you owe me a favor, so now you'll do my bidding. If that's the energy you bring to the equation, it's going to be tough. There's a great sort of mantra that I live by, which is you got to follow your highest excitement without thinking about the returns. You can't go into a business just saying, "I'm only doing this business to make money." Yeah, it's a big reason why you want to do things, but it has to somehow feed you, because the journey is going to be, at least in my case, the journey's been kind of brutal in a lot of ways. And you get knocked down, you have to keep getting up. And if all you're doing is hanging it on money or some external thing, it gets rough. So part of knowing yourself is knowing what you're passionate about, and part of knowing the other person is knowing what they're passionate about and matching those things correctly. It takes a bit of strategy, but if you manipulate, people sniff that a mile away. So it really does need to be genuine. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No worries. Like, you are the expert. I'm just here to moderate now. So I'm learning as much as everyone else here in this room learning from you. So okay, let's assume that you got the intro, you got the introduction from your evangelists, from your people, from your network that you've helped before, and now they're helping you. Great. You come in. What do you do when you go into that room? You're meeting with them. Do you have a pitch deck ready? Do you just go out and have a PowerPoint presentation? What has been successful for you when you're meeting with these investors?
Sure. So I'm a huge I plan a lot, and I plan for all kinds of permutations, right? And as much as I plan, nothing ever goes to plan. So what I like to do is really start the conversation by laying the groundwork. First and foremost, I want to be deeply respectful of the other person's time and more importantly, their expectations. So one of the first things I do, I sit down, I thank them, and I say, okay, I know you said we're going to meet at 11 o'clock. I've sort of allocated about an hour, hour and a half for this meeting, but I don't know if you need to get out of here any sooner than that. So what are your time constraints? So immediately I'm sort of allowing them to kind of control the time. And you want to be respectful. If they give you a long time frame, that can be a good thing. I'm a big fan of short time frames because it allows me to say, okay, since we only have 30 minutes, I just want to get right to it, right? Longer time frames typically mean this person is social and they want to chat and they want to know about you. I've met several investors that they hear the pitch, they talk about things, and then they want to go have dinner with you. They want to see if you're a human being. They want to see if you're someone that they actually want to work with, invest in, right? So I sit down, I say, time constraints, all right, we're good there. I'm sitting here today because I want to present X, Y, and Z, and the hope is that you become interested, at the very least, enough to keep a conversation going. Maybe you can help connect me with some of the things that me and my company need at this point. And if everything goes fantastic, maybe you become a partner, you work on things. But I understand that there's a process, and I'm here to answer all your questions. I also say, because I'm a social person, I like conversations. I don't like broadcasting. If I'm just sitting there and the mic's on me and I'm just telling everybody what I think, it's very difficult for me anyway to gauge their responses and gauge what people are getting out and if I'm hitting, what they're interested in. So I ask them a bunch of questions and I let them ask me questions. And by starting the presentation by saying, I prefer a conversation. I love questions. Like right now, the questions that like I want to answer those questions, right? Because I want to make sure that people are not that we have to do that. We'll do it in the Q&A. You're running the show, but it's in my best interest to give the other person what they want. And the other thing is, if I sit down, I have never sat down in the last 10 years with someone who didn't understand why I was sitting down with them in the first place, because I have absolutely been told, hey, this guy's really interested. Sit down and tell him his stuff. He may even have his checkbook in his back pocket, and I'm all excited. And I run into the meeting, and they're sort of perplexed as to who I am and what I want. And then when I say that, oh, I need money, they're like, oh, I'm not an accredited investor. Maybe I can help you. You know what I mean? Like that's a mess in my opinion.
Right.
So we only. Oh, so good.
Yeah, so this is a good thing to transition. So during your conversation, and I remember we were talking about this last week, Chris. You sometimes you just tell, you're looking at their body language, you're looking at how they respond to you, and then what's it that you ask them? Like I think we asked you ask them like how are you feeling right now? Is it going where you are? Like you just basically call it out, right?
Yeah. So if I yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. So this goes back to this sort of checking in and being honest and being forthright. If I'm a conversationalist, I like to have conversations. I like interaction. So if I find myself just talking, in my estimation, especially after I've said, if you have any questions, please, interject. If I'm not hearing anything and I've been talking for 5, 6, 7 minutes straight, I will stop and say, so I've been giving you a lot of information. I'm sure you're getting it all, but do you have any questions? And I'll ask them. If they're monosyllabic or just kind of nod their head at them, I will just completely break the fourth wall, so to speak, and say, how's this going? Like, are you getting out of this meeting what you sort of hoped? Because honestly, if this is heading a direction that's not useful to you, there's no sense. I don't want to not you don't want to say I don't want to waste your time. You don't want to give them that out necessarily, but it's sort of like your mini report card. Like, how's it going? You're an investor. I'm here to pitch you money. I get real honest real fast. And I think the more personable, my goal is to get from across the table to next to the person as quickly as possible. And what that means is, instead of having a table between where I'm offering something, they're offering something, and we're trying to negotiate and figure things out, and it's adversarial in a sense, I want to be more collaborative, more consultative. So I want to get on the same side of the table, throw my arm around them and say, look at this cool stuff we have in front of us. Like, how can we work together to maximize this and move forward? So if I'm broadcasting, I'm well across the table, and I might even be a mile across the table, and that's uncomfortable for me. So back to what you were saying, Mark, is I do little check-ins in the meeting. I'll say, so how am I doing? Right. And I get positive results. I've consistently had positive results from investors, because they get that usually it's this stoic sort of presentation, and everything has to be professional and everything has to be a certain way. I am professional. I went to business school. I can make a spreadsheet, right? I can do all those things. They know I have those chops, but I'm more social, and I'm kind of silly, and I have my own comfortable way of interacting with people. And so I want to show them that and realize that that's who they're going to be dealing with. It's sort of like the first date phenomena, right? Everyone goes out on a first date, and that's not who you are. It's some, veneer of what you think the other person wants to have. I find that those veneers, just like your second date and third date, you start figuring out who the person actually is, and then whether this is a good time or not. I'm either the best or worst first date you'll ever have, because I just lay it all out, and I'm just very honest, because you want to fail as fast as possible. I want to get to the yes or the no as quickly as possible. And if I get to a no, it instantly becomes data retrieval. Why? Why no? What could I have said? What could I have pushed across the table or offered you, or how could I have presented myself that would have made you lean more towards a yes? Right? So if you got a no, at least get some intel out, right?
Got it. So let's assume that, okay, midway through the presentation, investors like, may not be for me. Okay, how do you switch? Because remember you told me about, okay, if this person cannot help me, does someone know someone else that could help you? Or you can ask them like well, you put them in your shoes, right? And you ask them like, what would you do if you were me?
Right. That's a big one. That's a very important one. That's a very good thing you said right there. If someone's a no or a maybe, or you just kind of can't, see yourself moving forward, I love to say, I don't say give me a report card, but I basically say, what would have been stronger for me to offer? What would have been a better way for me to approach this that would have made you interested? And it might be someone's like, I don't do anything in healthcare. I don't do anything in nanotech. All I do is produce movies, right? So I say, okay, if you were in my position, given what I just showed you about my business and knowing what you know about me in this small little time, what would you do? Like, how would you get the ball down the field better? And again, this is asking people what they think. People love to give their advice. People love to talk about themselves and tell you what they think. So I have had several times where people are saying, hey, I don't think this is for me. And I say, okay, so if you were me, how would you approach this? And all of a sudden they come up with some genius idea that I didn't think about, which is fantastic. Cool. I get interesting information. But then suddenly they can see themselves being a part of the equation now. So I've actually turned around. Happens more in sales than with investors, but specifically with investors, I've seen as soon as people put themselves in your shoes, they're now seeing through your eyes with your technology and seeing the path forward. Uh, Again, they're now sort of part of the equation. They're part of the business, at least for a split second. And at the very least, you'll get great information. At the very most, you might turn a conversation around.
And so, Chris, like, how many new friends or mentors have you gotten? They may not be investors, but how many of these people have stuck around and continue to help you?
So I would say, so if I had to put an advisory board together for Christopher Warren, right, it would have probably over 100 people on it. I'm good at maintaining relationships. I'm good at helping other people. I never have my hand in people's pocket, so I'm always willing to help. And I've done, when you're sort of cash strapped, right, you figure out ways of making sure everybody at the table is kind of getting something, right? And it's been in that process, because I haven't been selfish or demanding, that I've maintained these relationships. So my mentors, I consider everyone a mentor in a sense, right? Because if someone is one step ahead of me, they have knowledge I don't, and I have to bow to that experience. Period. I don't care if you're 4 years old or you're 120 and been doing business your entire life. But I believe that a lot of the reason why a lot of these, I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but there's some some very accomplished people, business people, that I call friends, that I go to happy hour with, that I hang out with, and some of them I have business dealings with. Mostly I don't, but all of them say, you know what, Christopher, you're special, and I enjoy being around you, and I know good things are going to happen, and I'm just here to help. Like that's a fantastic space to be in. You maintain that relationship for 2-3 years. Right now, I'm getting pulled into this app idea, mostly because I have my education background in exercise and holistic health and all those things lends to what they want. But these are some big human beings that are putting together a team, and they want me on board, mostly because I'm fun to have in a boardroom, because I am relaxed and I just speak from I am me, right? But back to your question, the mentors, the relationships with business people, little by little, they go from being mentors telling me how things are, telling me what their advice is, and they go to being friends, truly. I aim towards being friends. And friends give advice. So that relationship stays there. But a lot of my friends that are lawyers and things like that, they switch gears. I mean, it is fantastic to have a battery of lawyers that are your buddies. Right now, I'm in the middle of a licensing deal for a drinking water company, and licensing deals are nightmares. They're huge documents, and they go on for months with legal fees. And I've got a battery of probably 5 or 6 lawyers that are looking at it, that are my buddies. And all I have to do is buy them a cocktail at happy hour, and they're happy to spend a couple hours going over it with me, right? So your network of these are evangelists. These are the same people, right? These are people that are invested in not necessarily my technology, but they're invested in me. They're friends. They're interested in sort of watching the Christopher show, whatever the hell that means this week, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thanks for telling us your street knowledge. I will say street knowledge.
You said I was an expert, and that's absolutely. I want to clarify something. An expert, in my estimation, is, or what's the definition? It's someone who's made every possible mistake in a given field. So I have fallen on my face fabulously, time and time again. I have had rough patches that would make you cry. But because I choose to enjoy the journey and the process, the ups and downs, it's kind of made me who and what I am, right? So yeah. I'm an expert by default.
By default. All right, so let's start picking these questions. from
Yeah,
people.
man.
The first question is, this is from Aaron. What's the hardest question you ever received while pitching your company to potential investors?
Why do I care?
No, what's the hardest question you ever received?
That's the question. Why do I care?
Why do
When
I
you're
care?
sitting in front of you sit in front of an investor and you do a pitch and you say, any questions? And they say, why do I care? Why do I care about you or this product? Like, that's swinging at the knees. That's rude. And that's happened to be 3 times. And I can go in my head and tell you exactly where all 3 were because it rattles you. Um, a lot of investors want to ask questions that take you way off your game. That do rattle you because they want to see how you deal with adversity. Why do I care? What's in it for what's in it for me? Very different question. Why do I care about what you just said? Right. And so to answer those questions, this goes back to knowing who you are. If someone says, why do I care? And you're like, eyes are darting all over the place and you get in a fear mode and you can't answer the question, uh, that becomes a downward spiral that you are not going to recover from. That's my toughest question. Why do I care?
Wow, that's a scary question. If someone asked me that, I would be shaking my knees too, honestly. I was like, wow.
But it's easy, right? Why do
Yeah,
I care?
that would catch
And
me
you
off guard too.
go back, you should know why they care, right? Why should any investor care? You're going to make money. In my industries, the things I choose to be a part of, you make money and you heal the world, and you heal people. Those are sort of my 3 criteria. I only work on technologies that heal the world, heal the people, and make money. So no one on this planet. Why do I care? Because I'm going to help you take your money and make more of it while you help people and heal the world. That's why you care.
Yeah, that's a good. And I recommend everyone who's listening to practice that, practice that answer too. So like practice that, get it down cold. So if anyone asks you that, you're ready. You're ready to be on top of your game. Next question. In your initial conversation with an investor, are you mainly just selling your business concept? Do you need to be prepared to discuss fundraising goals, or is that for a later meeting? What should you expect the investor wants to know upfront? Is that mainly your projected market and or growth?
Right. So the way I typically don't like to go into meetings where with an investor unless they have at least seen my executive summary. And in an executive summary, they know exactly what the company is, what our immediate sort of cash goals or cash requirements are, and who we sort of are about. They have a quick snapshot. You can be very vague in your exec summary, but it's sort of like one of my technologies, for example, is it costs $60,000 to have one installed in your house. It's $75,000 to do one for commercial. And if I'm not forthright with that pricing relatively early in the conversation, then I get a whole bunch of people that are like, "Wow, this is amazing! I really want it," and then they hear that they get sticker shock and off they go. So it's sort of like I want to go into a meeting with an investor who knows who I am, LinkedIn, right, or some sort of bio, and knows what the business is and why we're sitting down. Because if they don't know those 3 things, then you're walking in blind, and they might ask you anything. Now, even when they know everything, I show up with my laptop with all PDFs, all spreadsheets, videos of any testimony, anything that I have in my arsenal that I think this investor may be interested in. I have at a moment's notice, ready to go. And if I don't have it, all I say is, so I'm going to get you that information, and I want to know how you want that information back. Do you want me to send it in PDF? Do you want me to call you? Do you want to show up? Should we, grab another cup of tea? That kind of thing. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you, Chris.
Cool.
So we're still waiting for a couple more questions here before we end. So I would like to ask a question for you, Chris. So a lot of people say, yeah, you need to have a pitch deck, you need to have all these things in your slide. For you, how often have you used that pitch deck? And how often have you used that deck to just explain something to but it seems like
Right.
you've set yourself up where you just go past the pitch deck. How about for people who are they have to give this pitch deck to someone and they have to like present it? Do you have any tips or tricks for that?
Sure. So my goal, even when I formally present, like at a pitch competition, or not a pitch competition, but at a pitch event where there's 5, 6 investors in the room, my goal is to never get past the third slide. I hope that they are asking questions and start a conversation with me. That is truly my hope with a pitch deck. Now, a lot of times people just want to politely sit back and let me run through my pitch deck, right? Pitch decks are critical. If for no other reason, it gets you very accurate with what you're trying to get across, and you're trying to do it very succinctly. You don't want to waste anybody's time, especially your own. If I have 10 minutes to do a pitch, I typically want to have 4 minutes of actually pitching and 6 minutes of Q&A, right? But sometimes there's silence, and sometimes people are not interactive, and they just want to keep hearing you go. So you have to rely on that pitch deck. But here's another thing. I think pitching is one of those things that is just a lost art. I don't think people, not a lost art, but it's just something that people don't realize it's how important it actually is. And it's not necessarily important to present well during a pitch, but I can't tell you how many times I'm out with one of my mentors and here comes his buddy who's a monster in the industry. He's like, oh, this is Christopher. He's got the nanobubble thing. Christopher, tell him about the nanobubble thing, right? And, I might be 2 beers deep already, or let's feeling a little loose, and I need to be able to switch it on, switch it off. And you only get that by practicing incessantly. I drive my wife nuts because I'm in the shower and I'm talking to myself, I'm pitching constantly. I'm thinking of how I could have said things better. So the pitch deck is critical, not just for in the meeting, but for having your business, your idea so cold that you can just say it, and you should be able to say what your business is in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and 10 minutes. Like that should not be hard for you.
Got it. Great advice. We have another question from Aaron. Do you pitch with other members of your team? Who and why?
I'm sorry, it broke up.
Yeah. Do you pitch with other members of your team? Who and why?
Okay, so in a pitch, I'm usually the guy who's up there running my mouth. Okay, so I'm usually the front guy. However, investors are investing in a team. First and foremost, they bet on the jockey, not the horse, right? And I'm sure you've all heard that one. So the idea is you want to include your team as much as possible, their strengths, right? So when I'm pitching one of my technology things, I have 2 guys that have actually been neck deep in the technology themselves. I have one guy that's been doing application stuff, and I have another guy that's more the bean counter. He's more the financial manager, I guess you'd say. So I'm CEO. I'm the one that sort of captains it all together. But there's strength in numbers, but there's also strength in communicating your idea to an investor, and then the investor says, "Well, in your financials, I see da 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 da." I say, "I'm happy to answer the question, but I think the best person to answer that question is our financial manager." And then you turn it over to them for a quick second. Now, critical is you make sure that you are running the pitch. The person who's on point needs to be running it. And what I mean by that is I've been massively derailed by my engineers who love the sound of their own voice. Even though they're, quote, introverts, they will talk and talk and talk about their technology. So you have to school everybody in your pitch that their answer should be 10 to 15 seconds max. And if it keeps going back and forth, that's fine. Sometimes I go into pitch, I get 2 slides in, all of a sudden it's a question about the technology, and the guy's an engineer, and he talks to an engineer, and they love each other, and I just stay back, right?
Awesome.
You got to read the room. But yeah, I love having people. I think there's strength in numbers. I think it's nice to have a team. You are a team, regardless of what you do. No one does everything alone. So show your team. Just make sure your team's strong and presents well.
Awesome. So Jonah asked a question. It looks like people are asking more questions. This is great. It says, you mentioned that part of what you do is search for products to commercialize. How do you decide which products will be successful and which won't?
Yeah, so my criterion is very customer centric. I've seen some absolutely incredible technologies that customers don't care about, right? So I'm a huge fan of going out and talking to people and seeing their who do I think the end user is going to be? Let me go talk to 100 of them. And I mostly deal with B2B plays, right? I'm only interested in selling my technology to other businesses, let them do the heavy lifting and selling. So my talking to those customers is more defined, it's more niche. So case in point, one of the applications for our nanotech is in hydrotherapy. So going and talking to people in the spa industry, in the pool and spa industry, like day spa industry, hotel industry, athletic performance, people who sell equipment into those fields, I go and I talk to them and I say, do you care? And if so, why? And if not, why not? And at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to your gut. You've got to be able to read people's responses and make sure. I have this little rule when I talk to customers, and regardless, I say for every good thing you tell me, I need you to tell me 3 bad ones. So I want you to critique my presentation today. You want to critique my product, and for every good thing you say, I need to hear 3 bad ones. People like to say happy things and keep on your good side, but when you open the door and say, I want you to slam me, I have no problem hearing that. Like, you've got to love data. You have to stare it in the face, right? So I look very honestly at what customers say. I look very honestly at what my gut says, and then I make a decision based on that. And sometimes I'm right. Right.
Yeah. Next question. How appropriate is it to adopt a dramatic or theatrical or even light/humorous presentation style in a pitch to engage interest? Or is it best to be all business professional?
Yeah, man. So it really depends on the crowd. So when I am going and pitching to several investors that have just seen my my deck and they're meeting me for the first time, I'm in a suit. I'm not speaking conversationally yet. I'm not swearing. I'm not colloquial. I'm very professional. And then I wait for them to swear first. I wait for them to be more relaxed first. I open the door for it to be very relaxed. If they stay, a starched shirt, I stay a starched shirt. If they start getting relaxed, I start getting relaxed. But to go in and have your flaming batons and do like a show and crack jokes and if it's who you are truly, and that's just how you roll, do it. But first and foremost, people want to know that if they put you in, a big company or a group of customers and things like that, that you can show up appropriately. So I always talk about having different gears, right? You need to have different gears, and you need to be able to switch gears gracefully and effortlessly. You need to be super professional, and then you also need to have all those other gears in between then and however you hang out with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or your best friends, right? And reading your audience is critical. So being able to do some homework on who's in the room. If I know I'm going to be with 5 different investors, I get as much information about them as possible. There's tons of weird stuff on YouTube and all over the place. Well, you'll actually see them talking. And when you see how they present themselves publicly, you will now know how they expect you to present yourself publicly to them, at least at first. So, but to answer your question succinctly, I never come in cracking jokes, being like being this sort of comfortable and I gauge the audience first. Absolutely.
Right. So we have another question. So Chris, do you ever use props to help explain the idea or bring it to life for your audience?
Yes. I am a very I'm visual, and I'm also very conceptual. I'm a conceptual learner, right? So I have found that when I talk about something like nanobubbles, which you can't even see with a microscope, right, it becomes very difficult for them to sort of understand what you're talking about. A lot of times people are investing into things that they have no industry experience with. So a picture truly is worth 1,000 words, but having some sort of model, something they can put in their hands, anchors the conversation in a couple ways. Conceptually, yes, of course, it helps you get your point across, but there's something about handing them something that represents your business. I'll give you a case in point. So we make these covers for the hydrotherapy equipment, and they're really cool looking, in my opinion. They're a seed of life, which, if you know what that is, but it's a neat design. We have them 3D or CNC lathe. They're metal. They're gorgeous. And so when I explain, these are the types of covers we use, and I put them on the table, people like to pick them up and feel it. There's something about tangibility that if you can do with a proper, or hopefully your actual product, the better. So when I go to present my hydrotherapy system, I have them go to the facility, and that's my prop, is my actual equipment. You just don't want to be schlocky. You don't want to be cheesy. You don't want to have a prop that, carrot head or carrot top. I don't know if anybody knows what carrot top is, and I'm aging myself now. But, it needs to be appropriate is my point. But I am a big fan. For example, I learned a long time ago, there's a big difference between handing your business card to somebody and sliding it and putting it on a piece of on the table and having them pick it up. One is they're being handed something and they're being forced to react. The other is they're choosing to pick up your card. There's a very subtle sort of things about human nature that I happen to be enthralled with. I think it's fascinating. But again, businesses are people. Investors are people. The more you know people, the more you know yourself, the better you're going to be, in my opinion.
Awesome, Chris. So I think we're about time. We have no more questions. So Chris, based on the questions that people are asking, and do you have any last minute advice, tips for our students?
Yeah. I studied martial arts pretty intensely for a bunch of years, and the biggest take home I ever took was punch from the rear foot. What that means is be stable in your foundation when you're punching, when you're doing something. Make sure that if you miss, you don't fall down, right? That's how you get beaten, right? And how this applies is I spent my 20s rhino hunting, going after these huge deals, right? And I would make just as much money as I needed to cover my monthly nut, and then I go and spend all my time trying to do all of these things. And they take time, they take energy, and they take bandwidth. And if you are constantly in emergency mode, trying to figure out how you're going to make your next dollar or how you're going to make ends meet, you are off balance to begin with. And when you're off balance trying to start a business, you're going to make decisions you shouldn't be making. Or at least I made decisions I shouldn't have made because I was hunting money, I was hunting success over making the best possible business and product. So it was when I built my business with my wife, this wellness clinic, which is this little plate that's spinning in the background, and we don't make huge money with it by any means, but allows me to hang out on Thursday morning and do stuff like this and take phone calls and work on all these bigger projects. And if they go through, fantastic, awesome. I have a bigger foundation to punch from, right? I'm more stable. And if it doesn't go through, I'm not crippled. I'm okay, right? So my wife and I have chosen not to buy a house because we're more interested in investing in these companies. But if I invest and I have a house and then my investment's not go through and now I got a housing payment, now I'm off balance. Now I'm going to start selling shares to my company that I shouldn't be and doing all kinds of silly things, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Great.
That's
awesome.
my advice is create a strong foundation so you're not in emergency mode.
Wow, that's some real life coaching right there. So Chris, I thank you, and I thank you on behalf of our students who are joining us, watching us live here. Uh, if any student wants to contact Chris further, feel free to reach out to me, Mark, and then I could connect you with Chris if you want to talk with Chris further. Or Chris, are you open for that?
So listen, I love people. I love connections. Find me on LinkedIn. I think that has been out there. Friend me on LinkedIn. Connect with me. Talk to me through there. I'm an open book, so I'm always happy to. That's another thing about entrepreneurs. They love helping other entrepreneurs, even if they're not wildly famous and successful. Everyone wants to help. That is a litmus test for an entrepreneur. If they're willing to help, so I am willing. So reach out. I look forward to talking to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Chris. And yeah, I think that's the end of our webcast. Thank you all for coming out. Look for your email for the next webcast. We're going to try to, get more entrepreneurs and try to get more learnings from the street, from how in the trenches, get more tactics, just really figure out how to get things done here on the Tech Entrepreneur and Now Degree program. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.